Welcome, listeners. Today, I'm so grateful to be having this beautiful conversation with Emily Mays. She is a parent coach and advocate for kids, and it's a blessing to be having this conversation. So, welcome, and I can't wait to see what comes up today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And I'm super excited to be here and chat and share with your listeners.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Tell us a little bit about your story and who you are and what your mission is and what you love, and just kind of I don't know, what your passions are and what fires you up. Um, for those of you that don't know, I came across Emily on Instagram based on just having common interests and getting to see the work that she puts into the world.
Yeah, I think we may have actually connected through OCA. Didn't you? You took OCA, right?
Yes.
And so I saw another parent coach and I'm like, yes, because I'm pretty sure I'm the first one who went through there. And so I was super excited to see more, and there have been more since you, but yeah. So I'm Emily Mays, and my story, I had a traumatic childhood, and I never wanted kids, but I always wanted to help kids. So I became a teacher. I taught high school math for 5 years. I have my degree in mathematics teaching with a focus in psychology from Clemson University. Go Tigers. And um, I was just through studying psychology, I was really aware of how cyclical trauma is and how hard it is to break that. And so, like I said, I didn't want kids. I was absolutely terrified. I knew I would just screw them up like I was. That was my thing. I know. Um, so then I accidentally got pregnant. And so I just dove in to all of the parenting stuff and really used my knowledge background with education and psychology and what we know about childhood development and people in general to really piece together like what makes sense for parenting. There's a lot of advice out there, and when you look at it, you're like, that doesn't really make sense. So I was able to, I really just taught myself how to be a good parent. And then I had my first son, and I recognized that the parenting approach, this respectful approach, more gentle approach, kind of intertwined with attachment styles or attachment parenting styles, I realized that it was working. But then I also realized that I myself was still struggling, and a huge piece of it became my own personal healing journey. So that, I believe, is just an integral part of, like, it's so much more than learning this parenting style and having some strategies, but you've got to do the personal work too. And that's something I learned firsthand. So yeah, I dove into it. And I realized I could help other parents with this. And I'm passionate about it. Like I said, I always wanted to help kids. And now it's like I get to help kids by helping their moms. And it's an even more impactful way, because as parents, we have like the biggest impact on our children. So I get to help kids indirectly, but just in a stronger. So it's just so important. I'm really passionate about my work with moms and supporting them and helping them. And I really believe that we can change the world through raising our kids in this respectful, loving, healthy way.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. just hearing you talk about all of those things like gets my mind racing and my heart pumping. And it's like, it's so valuable. And yet it's just one of those things that because it's so abstract, right? Like we're talking about like the unconscious mind and the subtle programming that we pick up when we're kids, like everything that we observe and experience that may not necessarily be verbal, or there may not even be ways to explain like what's going on. But as a kid, you just have that felt sense, and you have that inner knowing and that deeper wisdom. And it kind of sounds like your inner knowing and deeper wisdom carried you through and like brought you and propelled you to like study these things and parts and pieces that you knew you were in alignment with. So how cool to have like been your own coach in a way to like teach yourself all of the things that now you get to give to other families, but also give back to your inner self that like needed you at that time too. It's crazy like what's out there. And I think you said it so beautifully about the intuitive piece of like, what makes sense for me, like what's my style going to be like, even if it's not like anybody else's style? Well, it's exactly how you said, like one kid is going to be really different than another. And I think that's another thing that, even just growing up in my experience too, I felt like really unseen, unheard, gaslit, just like I felt different. And it wasn't until I learned to like validate myself through those parts and pieces. Like I had to learn that because the people I wanted the validation from the most just were not capable or able to provide that to me. And so I think there's a quote out there that says like, we're not responsible for how we were raised in that way, but we are responsible for where we go next and like our healing now once we learn and grow. And there's just certain things that it's like when you dive in, you can't really unknow because you just you find it so validating for those times where like you did need to hear it the most. So yeah, I think one of the things I've been thinking about lately is just how kids, when they're born, they're codependent. They need their parents. And it's almost when like kids become physically independent, like, oh, you can get your shoes on by yourself. Oh, you can do this by yourself. It's almost like when kids become physically independent, like sometimes parents forget that they're not all of the way like emotionally independent. And I just want to hear about like your experience with that, or just your take on that of how you perceive kids grow and change like developmentally, not just physically, but there's this like emotional component, and you could even say like psychosocial spiritual component, like just they're so connected and so present and so in the moment that it's like, oh my gosh, they have just as much to teach us as we have to teach them.
Yes, 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 to all of that. So you are so right that it's like, as our kids grow, all of a sudden, they look so capable and independent, and we can give them so much more responsibility. And then they do something, and we're like, oh, what the heck? Like, whoa, you know better. And so one of the big things, you've probably heard this before, ancient philosophers used to call 8 or 7 years old the age of reason. So a big thing that I teach is that around 7 years old, and that's an average, so it could be earlier, it could be later, around 7 years old is when kids start to develop impulse control. And they're only starting to develop it. We're not finished until sometime in our 20s. So even though even up to like 7 years old, they are still like big toddlers. They're babies, even though they don't seem like it. And that's like a huge mindset shift that I try to get everyone to understand, like, yes, they are capable. They need independence and opportunities to assert themselves and be autonomous, but they still need our support in that emotional regulation. And through that co-regulation, that's how they will eventually learn to self-regulate. And they still need us as that impulse control. Like, they're going to do things that are, they know better. Just because they know better, they don't have the impulse control to do better. And I mean, even as adults, sometimes we know better and then we're like, oh, oops. So yeah, that's one of the big things that I teach is literally like stepping in and being your child's impulse control and then supporting them through co-regulation for those big emotions like you mentioned.
Yes. Yeah. I oftentimes feel like when kids, you know, are having their experiences, like, to be honest, like, I don't know how else to describe it, but it feels like kids are in a different time zone. Like the way that they experience time and the way that they experience just like the sensations that the world can bring. Like they're really empathetic and they're really big feelers, until we teach them that that's not, what gives them connection, maybe in some ways. But like they start out being so like, like just absorbing every little thing in their world, like every stimulation, every sense. And like, I don't know about you, but when I'm with a kid, whether it's, a kid that I'm working with or just someone I know, it's like they naturally slow you down so much. That's like when you have that time to be one on one with them, of like, holy smokes, like to see your internal world right now, like, I don't know, it just blows my mind every time because it's like they're taking things in for the first time, and like you just get to see what something means to them, and like you get to see what's important to them, and rather than like, telling them what should be important for them, and so you get to learn like what they truly value, like naturally on their own. And yeah, like I always find it so trippy because I won't know like how much time goes by, or like I think we're truly in a different dimension sometimes. It's like when you have that time to really like just be in it with them. It's like you can see that they are so in the moment.
Yes, kids are in the moment and that is a big lesson. Like just being present here now. They're not worried about all the things they have to get done or getting dinner done or anything like that. So, yes, it is so beautiful and relaxing when we can just let it go and be fully present with them like that and experience the moments and listen to what they have to say. And like you said, just listen to like their authentic values and their stories and just really truly getting to know them and valuing them for who they are and who they're becoming. It's beautiful. It can be so fun and relaxing, and that's how I love spending my days with my babies, like just chilling.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So cool. Yeah, I'm so curious, what has been like your biggest challenges as a parent, and like the biggest rewards, and maybe the challenges are the rewards, who knows?
The biggest challenges and rewards. I think that, so like I said, I did not want kids. I was totally terrified. I had the very typical view of motherhood. I viewed it as it was going to be horrible. Like it was going to suck. Like I was going to be a martyr.
Mhm.
And so I had very, very, very low expectations. And so I think just the whole experience has been a reward in itself. And it's been mind blowing because I'm like, whoa, like this really is amazing. And I can't even, I mean, the rewards, like the love that you feel for a child, and just I don't even know that I can articulate it. But I love my babies so much, how much they've taught me, how much they have fueled my growth, and my transformation as a person. I was, because of my childhood, I was super like insecure. I was pretty much an alcoholic. I I was just not in a good place at all. I was angry at like the world, super unhealthy. And having my kids really just, I didn't have a choice, but it was like, all right, like, let's do this. And now, like, I love this powerful, confident person that I've become as a mother. And so I don't even know if I would have, like, would I be here if it wasn't for my kids? Would I be this person, or would I have stayed on that other path, you know? So for me personally, just like who I've become, that's one of the biggest rewards too. Um, and then challenges. I mean, there's challenges every day. Once you figure something out, it's like, all right, let me try something new. And so it's, learning how to stay calm and manage yourself and enforce your boundaries so that, you're not living in chaos, but also giving enough freedom so that they can be autonomous and independent. And it's like this fine balance of support and setting boundaries and not losing it. And then once you add a second kid to the mix, it just like adds in even more to that. Yes. And like balancing all the schedules and keeping everyone safe and from hurting each other. So toddlers can be rough. So those are probably the biggest challenges. Just every day there's a different challenge. And then it's the process of figuring out how to handle it in a way that is supportive to everyone and that works for everyone and allows me to maintain my sanity. I feel like a lot of people, a lot of parents will kind of just like not do something or let things go, and then they end up feeling like resentful about it, or just angry and frustrated because they should have set a boundary earlier. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it sounds like the best way to tackle it is to just be present. Like, even though that's easier said than done, like it sounds like it does take practice. And of course, like you said, once you get comfortable, then whoop, the world flips over again. Like you see things from another angle, or, it's like I've had the sense I don't have kids of my own at this time at this point in time, but I do have a dog. So I'm a dog mom. And it's just like I perceive like having kids is like the most vulnerable thing you could ever do. Like you have your heart beating outside of your body, you like, and I'm sure it's like different when you actually experience it too, because yeah, everyone has a unique experience, but I can't even imagine, like just what that presents and how it does pull at your heartstrings in different ways, and like requires you to show up like in ways that like you just wouldn't without having that experience, like just like the different parts of you, and like them being your little mirrors and them showing you your shadow, and just them like naturally, yeah, bringing up so many of those things within yourself that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was still there. Oh my gosh, like I totally, yeah, like see my part in this too. And like the balance of having the power and control as a parent, because like you like know what's best for your kid, but also like allowing them to foster their own sense of self too, and becoming their own person. And like, to be honest, there's times where parents like are grieving their kids because like they had the kid that they didn't want, or they didn't have the kid that they always wanted, or like you have like this fantasy of what you think and who you think your kid will be. And then you, yeah, like you said, it all comes back to yourself of like your own personal development of, oh, like if I want to see changes, I have to like be the change, or I have to examine those things. Like, oh, I don't want my child to be yelling. Okay, like, are there ways or places in my life where like I'm yelling? Like it's so much harder to hold up the mirror and be like, wait a minute, am I doing those things that I don't like, that I'm like seeing or experiencing? But that goes with like any relationship too, and just like the deep connection and like the emotional bonds that come with getting to know somebody on a deep level and on a level of, yeah, like when you're a parent, you literally get to see your child at every stage of their life, like every part of them. And then it's like at what point do kids like become discouraged and they like don't share their full parts of themselves, or whether that's like their environment, or, and it's not up to parents to like know everything, but yeah, it's so fascinating to me because like I see us coming out of like this older paradigm of like the fear and control and punishment, and coming more into like the balance of, personal authority and choice and like natural consequences, more so than having like this agenda of like that insecurity of like, well, I don't know, so I'm going to assert my power and control, versus like, what if I just said, I don't know, I feel uncomfortable, I don't have all the answers right now, like, because that's vulnerable, and we don't practice that as much, and we don't know how to be with the discomfort as much. And I think that that's something we're really expanding our tolerance with, just in like this new generation or new wave of parenting, or just this awakening in a sense of like, I feel like this work is so critical and so important at this, especially at these times. Like, yeah, it feels really big.
It is big. And I love all that you said. Like this vulnerability of raising children is so, yeah, it's so true. And then, and comparing it to the other relationships, that's another big thing. It's like if something isn't acceptable in your romantic relationship, like punishing your husband or partner or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, like if that person did something you didn't like and you punished them or spanked them. I mean, there's some places where people get a spanking, but but so like if you were mad at them and you hit them, like that's abuse. So why?
Right.
I just don't even understand like how we can justify doing that to our smallest, most vulnerable, most helpless people. And so it's such an intermingling and comparison to our other relationships, and with this vulnerability. And that's something that I learned too. That was a big part of my journey, like being this person for my kids and accepting them and being present and allowing their emotions and treating them with respect and meeting their needs in ways that I didn't get, but ways that I needed. It's like I learned how to do that for my kids. And then I was able to apply that to myself and to my other relationships. And it's something I'm still working on, with adults. It's a lot easier for me to be patient with my kids and with adults, but it's like these things that we're using with our kids, we can apply them to all of our relationships. Like we all want to be seen, heard, loved, understood, respected, just treated like people. And it's like you hear, what's the saying, like treat your neighbor like you want to be treated. It's the same thing. And we're just applying it to the little people in our lives. And again, it's so much easier said than done because They are, again, like you said, they can bring up so much of our stuff. They can trigger this, our developmental trauma, all this stuff from our childhood. And we might not even be able to, we're not sometimes not even consciously aware of what they're bringing up, why their behavior is so upsetting to us. But a lot of times it's because our needs weren't met as kids, and it's just bringing up that junk from our past. So yes, it's so much easier said than done. It takes practice, it takes work, it takes consciousness, and giving yourself grace, because you're not perfect. Like, you will mess up. I mess up like every single day, but I try to view it as, not a failure, but it's something to improve on. Like, this is what happened. What do I want to do better next time? How can we improve this? Or and noticing patterns within myself, like, all right, when I'm scrolling on Instagram, my kids act wild and I get snappy. Like, all right, let's just put the phone away. Problem solved, So yeah, it's so much. There's so much that comes with parenting, but it's so fun.
I absolutely loved what you said about like the generational patterning of like when we didn't get that need met in that exact developmental stage, right? It could be before our consciousness, or it could be before we remembered, but it's like living in our body, and it's that felt sense, right? It's like, of course, like our parents didn't want to pass down the generational pain to us, but that's just the best they could do because that was the way they were imprinted. And oh my gosh, I just went back to Columbus this past Memorial Day for my grandpa's celebration of life. And I was moved to tears because I found one of his autobiographies. And it's rare for like people to, write an autobiography. And of course, it was more special because it was my grandpa. And he was a big feeler, and he loved Broadway, and he loved to just like go to the theater to be moved. And that was like his way of feeling. And like just getting to be with himself and learn about himself. And he wrote in there about being, spanked with a paddle. And he wrote about how he wanted to do things differently with his kids. And like, even though there was like that intention to do things differently, it didn't necessarily like turn out different, if that makes sense. Like, because my mom got spanked and then like I got spanked, right? It's like, even though we had that intention to do things differently, it like still takes that inner transformation to like then do the thing differently. Like, you can still have that intention, but then it like takes a while to implement that. And it's also ironic too that like I got to read it after he passed, because it really kind of confirmed like this feeling of like, I am so in the right field. Like, I'm so doing exactly what I need to do. And I think that's one of the hardest things for like parents, or even like our family, like the generation piece, that like it's hard to admit that like, oh my gosh, we did the best we could, but actually we could have done things in a different way. And it's hard to say like, oh my gosh, we could have done things different, like it's much easier to be like, yeah, we all turned out great, but like, it's like, did we turn out
I got spanked and I'm okay. But are you?
It's like, but emotionally and in relationship, are you, So it is like that mindset. It is that practice. And yeah, the big question becomes, what do we want to pass down unconsciously to our future generations? And the good news is when we do the inner healing ourselves, we get to gift that to like 7 generations past and 7 generations forward, because yeah, it's that unconscious piece that we get to pass down. And like, that's such a gift, so wild. It's so
I
wild.
agree.
Yeah.
And so your grandpa sounds really special for sure, especially Like from that time and a man like feeling his emotions, like that's totally unheard of. But he sounds so special. What a wonderful person. And then, and
Yeah.
like you said, kind of going off that, like something, something I say is like, it really is all our parents' fault most of the time, but they didn't do it on purpose because it was their parents and their parents and their parents. And it's just these cycles. And just like you said, we can have this intention to do better, but it takes that inner work. But also, I think it takes strategy because it's like, okay, I don't want to do this to my kid, but we're in the moment and oh my gosh, like, what do I do? What do I do? And so many parents, it's like, they know what they want to do. They read the books and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And then the moment comes and it's like, oh my gosh, like, how do I actually make this work? And so it's just, it is again, like that consciousness and having a plan and the knowledge and actually how to implement it in the moment. And it's so hard when you weren't raised that way. It's like, you really have no idea. You have no role models. And a lot of parents don't have, a lot of parents that are doing like this gentler, respectful parenting approach, they don't have a lot of people around them doing this. You know, they're usually lucky if they can find one or two friends that are doing this approach. So they don't have people to talk about it with. They don't have these role models. They know they want to do something different. They just don't know what or how. And then it's like that moment comes and then like the rage sets in. And again, they're just like triggered. And then we know in their brain, they're just getting into fight or flight. And it's going to take them right back to their childhood and what they know and repeating those same things. And then later usually comes the guilt and the, oh my gosh, like I know I don't want to do this. And, you know, all of the things. And it becomes such a cycle for sure.
Yeah. And like just how you described, like that distribution of accountability, right? We cannot peg it on one person or one event or one thing. And like we shouldn't put that on ourselves either to expect ourselves to be perfect, right? Like we get to have the rupture, we get to have the repair, we get to lean in and say, this is where I messed up. And like, this is where I'm being accountable for my actions, right? Like we get to model and display that so our kids can be like, oh, it's safe to mess up here. Oh, it's human to mess up here. Oh my gosh, it's like, I'm not a robot. Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Like, like
That's something I always think too.
yeah.
So I have boys, and so I imagine, I'm like, can you imagine like if I was perfect, right? And they grow up and they have, if they were to get married with a wife and she was struggling, they'd be like, what's wrong with you? Like my wife was perfect or my mom was perfect. And it's like, I could just imagine my husband saying that to me. And it's like they need us to be imperfect. If we were perfect, we would not be preparing them for life. We would not be preparing them for relationships or anything else. So that imperfection, as frustrating as it can be and as hard as we can be on ourselves, you know, like it's necessary and it's all a part of the process. And it's how we raise healthy, balanced, well-rounded individuals who, just like you said, know that it's safe to be human, to make mistakes and to apologize and repair.
Mhm. Yeah, like it's oftentimes like sometimes parents come to me and they're like, wait, are you sure I can just tell them how I'm doing and how I'm feeling? And it's like, yes, they need to know that you are not holding everything in. You are not swallowing all your emotions. You are not sitting on your experiences. You are not, showing them that what you need to be strong is to like suppress or, push it down. It's like as great of practice as that is for you to come out and say, hey, like, I'm not at my strongest moment right now. Like, I'm being really tested right now, coming from that place of ownership of like, I'm feeling, I'm doing, I'm, this way in this moment. Like, that is equally as important for your kids or your people that you're in relationship with to hear, because it's like they get to know your authenticity. They get to know when you're struggling, even if it feels like, you have to surrender a little bit, or like loosen the grip a little bit of how you wished it went or how you wanted it to go, like they need to see that just as much as you as yourself need to practice that, because yeah, it's like it's it's just undoing all of these um filters, like it's like, what if we didn't filter ourselves through all these funnels and all these ways of being? Like, what if we just literally said exactly how we felt? It's really it's crazy. It's just like, oh, I can do that. Like, oh, I'm allowed
Yes.
to do that. Oh, that's not going to like make my child feel responsible for me. No, it's going to show them that you're saying you can handle going through something tough or having an off day, or you get to say, this is my job to feel these things and handle these things. And you don't have to worry, versus like the alternative of like, they're already sensing and feeling that you're worried and being those ways, but like your behavior is not matching it. And then they're like, wait a second, like, is my radar off? Like, can I
Mm-hmm.
sense like my mom or my parent or my caregiver's authenticity? Like, is there something wrong with me that like they're saying one thing, but like they're showing something really different? And now I'm supposed to know, how to be in relationship with that. And then on top of
Yeah.
that, I'm supposed to know how to be and act and behave. Like, what?
It's normalizing these emotions.
Mhm.
And because our kids are feeling them too, whether it's from themselves or sensing them from us. So, yeah, just like you said, we're unraveling this paradigm and getting into a new paradigm, really, where we can feel those emotions and express them and normalize them and let our kids know that it's safe to feel those and that they will get through them. They will survive. Just modeling that, like, I'm having a really bad day or I'm really sad right now, but I'm going to get through this and we can cope with this in a healthy way. So, normalizing the emotions and showing them how to cope, how to feel the emotions and deal with it and make it through in
Mhm.
healthy ways instead of, like you mentioned earlier, suppressing and internalizing, because we know that then that just gets expressed other unhealthy ways, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. That's how it goes.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. And that's like the work that we're both spreading into the world of like, oh, it's just like the giving that gift of like, oh, you think you're being a burden right now? Like, oh, you think that you're too much right now? Great. Like, wherever that came from, let's work on letting that go. And that way you get to see that what you used to think you were being a burden with is actually a gift, because you're granting others that permission to do the same too. And yeah, as much as it is easier said than done, like the only way we get to do it is to keep practicing it and to notice the subtle moments, and then like just getting to deepen in our connections of like, yeah, feeling safe to show up in those ways and in different spaces, and then like taking emotional risks and trying it in other spaces and seeing what's acceptable and like modeling to others like that you get to be that safe space for them too. And it's, yeah, it's so important to allow that. And yeah, it's like you said, it's a piece of health that we're just now integrating. And imagine how much healthier we'll be if those feelings don't manifest into, physical pain or like external pain, right? It's like it's like when we treat it from the source, we're able to increase our tolerance. And then as the stresses of life come toward us, there's more that we can handle, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to be a challenge. It just means that we get to hold more and transmute more and teach more and share more and have like this fulfilled sense that we're contributing and receiving and expanding. Totally.
Yes. And like you said, like taking that emotional risk, that's another thing that I teach. Like, being vulnerable with your emotions with your kids, it's such a safe place. Like kids, especially our young kids, maybe not teenagers, but our young kids, they are going to love us just like unconditionally. So when we're like, I'm really sad, I'm really angry, I'm really frustrated, whatever, like they're not going to judge us for that. It really is such a safe place to experiment with that emotional expression. And then, like you said too, like internalizing it. I'm in a program right now for trauma informed practitioners. And so, yes, we are diving into that, just how emotion is stored in the body, and actually like how trauma is created is when our body, when we experience something that had emotion that our body couldn't process. So we think of trauma as something like big, awful, like a car accident or abuse, but it could even be something super small, like walking in on your parent changing clothes or something like that. Like it can be these small events if you were not allowed or not, if you were unable to process the emotion that went with it. And so like that is trauma, and then it's stored in the body, and like you were saying, manifests in all these different ways, like physical pain and actual, health conditions, autoimmune conditions, all kinds of things. It's really, really interesting. It's like the one of the basics of actual true health is just simply expressing and processing your emotion. And if you just process it and let it be, it goes. Like it comes and it goes like a wave. But if you don't process it, then it's stored and it's there coming back repeatedly and more almost like uncontrollable ways.
Yeah, like as you were saying that, I was just thinking about like the metaphor of a shredder, right? It's like sometimes it says like only put in 8 pages at once, and it's like, what if you are overwhelmed and you have more than 8 pages, and then it gets jammed and stuck? Well, then it's like you might just not use it, or you might be impacted by the fact that it's like out of order. But really, it's like, oh, I can just turn it upside down and like rework like the pieces that got stuck. Like, oh my gosh, this sounds overwhelming and hard, but what if like me not addressing this creates even more overwhelm and even more stuckness, like
Yes.
even when you said like, taking the emotional risks with your kids, right? It's like even if they don't accept you, it's like you can model that, okay, I can still handle that, right? Of like, or
Yes.
if I'm in a jam, I can actually still handle that, right? It's like once you know those inner workings, you're not as intimidated to like lean in and say, wait a minute, I used to like fear this or have a story about this, or give it all of this power, but really it's like, actually, I'm capable of handling this as long as I give it the time and space. And like how you're saying, the support, like I'm sure like that group container is such a support of getting to expand in that. I'm so proud of you for doing that. That is next level. That's so cool.
Thanks. I'm really excited. And I love that shredder analogy. That's good. I'm gonna have to use that. I like it.
Totally. Yeah, I just thought of it because it's just like, it's literally, you get that sense of like, oh, I can't use it now. It's like, wait a minute, how would I be able to like continue to use it? Oh yeah, just unplug it, turn it upside down, but
Yes.
it's like we have stories about what that would take to like unplug it, turn it upside down, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's scary, but it's also like, let's just break it apart in digestible chunks, and then we just do what we do, like that's right in front of us, the next thing, and that's what's so crucial to have support around, is like, what is that next thing? And oh yeah, let me prove to my brain that, oh yeah, I did that, I can do that, like I can take charge of my health, I can take charge of my well-being. And like, it's no wonder your world around you starts shifting too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we just have to do the work. And yeah, it's not always easy. I feel like Okay, so it's not always easy, but it's so worth it. And it's when you haven't started doing it, it's like you can't even comprehend how much better life can be, how much better you can feel, how calmer you can be, how much more joy and ease you can experience. It's like you have no concept of it until you start doing it. And you're like, whoa, okay, it really is worth it. Like, so the work, unjamming the shredder is not always easy, but it is so worth it. And it's like in the process of unjamming your shredder, you get an upgrade. You upgrade it, and now it can hold, way more than 8 pages.
I love that. Oh my, yes, that is totally it. Oh my gosh. So special. Yeah. Oh, well, I just want to say thank you so, so much for this discussion today. I feel like my heart opening and my mind wandering, and I just feel really, really grateful and blessed to have crossed paths with you. And I can't wait to see, what our paths do in the future too. And just, yeah, I can't wait to see what you're up to. And I just feel grateful.
Yes, thank you so much for having me and for this discussion. I love, love, love just chatting with other people that, are passionate about this and into this. And just like you, like so many things. I'm like, oh my gosh, my mind. So many, fun thoughts. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, of course.